I know, that's where I'm going. That's where I'm going. I'm going by the giant rock. Yeah? I don't want... Yeah, lots. But, wait.
Hi, this is viewer Pop 1 again. Mackenzie and Miss Angie are here. Today, this is video Pop 1. We're going to do the eyeshadow today. Oh, that's so beautiful. Oh. There we go, it's all done. Look at me. It's so cute.
Mackenzie was in ballet and cheer, and when doing those performances she would wear makeup, and then she sees me get ready for work in the morning and I wear makeup, and her stepsisters are teenagers so they wear makeup, so she sees a lot of the women in her life wear makeup. And as a mom, you know, if that's an opportunity for your child to be creative, and she's showing an interest in something, then why not allow her to explore that? So I figured that buying her Claire's makeup, which is designed for children, would be a good way to start her or support her in her creativity. And I was actually working on a project for work related to talc and cosmetics, and she's the one who asked me if her makeup was safe. And when I looked at the label, it didn't say one way or the other if talc was an ingredient, so I figured we'll get it tested.
All 4 of those tests, taken from that same kit, the 3 primary colors plus green, were found to contain asbestos once we got it on the microscope. And I said, well, wait a minute. Claire's is very ubiquitous. It's in 95% of the malls in America. There are more Claire's than there are Hardys in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And I was able to find asbestos in products from all over the country, from Seattle and L.A. and New York and Atlanta and Indiana and Chicago. I didn't miss. So once we had found it in all of them, I went back to Kristi and said, okay, hey, it's everywhere.
I ended up on the ground, I just physically sank, and all I remember thinking was, as her mom, I'm responsible. I'm supposed to be protecting her and making sure she's safe, and instead I'm exposing her to something that could kill her. What color are you putting on these next? A dark? Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'm not going to worry too much about these little pieces.
Patterns.
I'm 58 and I've been murdered in slow motion. Current regulations of asbestos are based on science that is decades out of date. Regardless of what you may have heard or read, there is no safe form of asbestos and no safe level of exposure.
Asbestos is actually fibrous rock, okay? Can you see that this vial contains something that looks like almost like cloth?
Yes.
All right, that's actually rocks of tremolite that grew in California. The individual fibers in the asbestos are actually very, very, very small. If you inhale those little spears of rock, your body tries to take various cells, T cells, white blood cells, macrophages, try to wrap around the fiber. But since it's a spear, it can pop their shells and they end up building up dead macrophages or T cells that become a scarring. And that scarring can be a site for cancers. The different cancers that are associated with asbestos exposure include asbestosis, that's just where you've inhaled a bunch of these fibers and those scars build up where your lungs can't expand anymore. Then you have lung cancer itself. And finally, Some fibers, especially the more rigid fibers called the amphiboles, can work their way in from the lung to the actual lining of the lung, the mesothelium. And if cancers are produced there, it produces a type of cancer that's very specific, and the only known cause of mesothelioma is exposure to asbestos. If you inhale asbestos, they're going to stay with you for the rest of your life, because the amount of time it takes for one fiber to be digested is on the order of 30 to 40 years. And actually, we've done different studies where, especially the talcum powder that used to be very common, that was in like a powder puff. And they would puff it on their faces. They'd be in a cloud of smoke. We found that those talcum powders release significant amounts of asbestos if there's asbestos in the talc. And when you apply blush or eyeshadow that contains asbestos, it may well be at low levels, but the invisible fibers still do get released, and we've proven that in the laboratory.
When I first started playing with makeup, it was when I was a little girl and I wanted to play dress up. So of course, when you go into places like Claire's and there's sparkly glitter boxes and colors and princesses, it just captivates you, and it's something fun that you do when you're a little kid. Now that I'm older, I still wear makeup just because it's something that I like to do. It's something that's creative. The young women and girls that use these products, they assume that it's safe to use because it's so common, just like you assume that your water is safe to drink. They're not scared to use this because they shouldn't be.
The intent was not to file a lawsuit. You know, I was trying to give Claire's the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they didn't know. I thought they would just, I would provide this information, they would do the right thing, they would recall the products. They did not. So I did not want to file a lawsuit. But when Claire's came back and they said that their products did not contain asbestos, then I put them on notice that we were going to seek further action. We didn't have a client at first. The whole idea was to clean up their act because they were poisoning, literally poisoning children across the United States and the world.
I just don't understand how Claire's can come out and lie about what they're doing to kids and how they're poisoning them instead of owning up to it and doing something about it. How can they just do that?
As a lawyer, when these results came back, I knew what the legal significance was immediately. But that wasn't my first thought. My first thought was remembering my daughters going to Claire's and other makeup manufacturers and purchasing these very things. What's a father's first and most important obligation to his daughters? Is to protect them. And I failed to protect them, my own daughters, because I trusted Claire's in the cosmetic industry.
So Mackenzie was 6 when all of this happened, and she has met some of our clients at work. She knows that people can die from asbestos, and when she asked if she could have her makeup back, I had to explain that she wasn't going to be able to use that anymore because there was asbestos in it. So her next question was, am I going to die? And you don't want to lie to your kid, but you don't want to scare your kid. You don't want to put that fear in them. So I just told her that she will be fine and that we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that other kids don't end up afraid or have bad stuff in their makeup. And she still will ask me, you know, how many more years before I need to make sure I'm okay. And I just tell her that, you know, the doctors will make sure and that she'll be fine. But in my mind, I just am so fearful for any cough or sneeze or, you know, the shortness of breath. Like, it's a waiting game, and I don't want my daughter to feel that way, but as a parent, that's all that it is. is just hoping that she's not one of the ones that gets sick. Why are you crying?
It's scary to think about.
You know you're safe. And you're helping other kids be safe. Okay? It makes you feel sad. And worried? Okay. And you're gonna make it so other people don't have to worry either. You're doing a good job. Okay? Okay. I love you. Don't fall.
When you look at your hands and then you look at your toes, that's your thumb.
Okay.
It looks like ice cream.
Okay, is your cone in place?
Yeah.
Okay, press. Cool. Okay, then stop.
Then just take it out. It's so hard to draw on this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bye.
Good job. That's awesome. Good job. It looks great.
Yay! It looks cool.
It looks awesome.
When we wrote the rules for what was considered an asbestos-containing material, we said that it had to be something where we intentionally put in asbestos at more than 1%. Therefore, if we have a product like an eyeshadow that little girls buy at Claire's that contains a fraction of a percent, which it does, then we're dealing with a material that is not regulated technically as asbestos-containing. Unfortunately, though, fractions of a percent and a loose disaggregated powder, like face powder, can release substantial amounts of asbestos fibers into the air. So they can say it doesn't contain asbestos based on that 1% rule, or they can say that if you look at the individual fibers, they don't technically meet all definitions of a fiber. There's lots of slippery ways that they can assert that it's not a problem when it is a clear and present danger and an inconvenient truth for the manufacturer. This is how you would actually analyze for asbestos in a bulk building material. All right?
Right.
Now here we're only able to magnify up to about 400 times. All right? So we can't see the real small fibers that we're going to be able to see when we go over to the electron microscope. So I said, if you can't find it by PLM and you can't find it by XRD, the talc company is going to say it doesn't have asbestos, there's no fibers, right?
Right.
But we know that if you look a little closer with a more powerful microscope, like this guy, and we can use electrons. Now, electrons have a much shorter wavelength than even X-rays. So we're able to look at very, very small particles and magnify them up to 1,000,000 times. All right? So when we're looking at this, we're able to see that size fraction of fibers, right? Those fibers that are small enough to get down and do the actual damage in the bottom of your lung.
Right.
The problem is there's no method out there that says this is what you got to use. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of lobbying by the talc companies especially to make sure we don't consider those fine fibers that contaminate the talc, that we only worry about the percentages. The problem is we're not doing the rigorous testing that needs to happen to make sure the talc isn't contaminated before it gets into a product. And if we're an American manufacturer, we're finding the cheapest outsourcing we can do. We're not required to make sure that someone in Hong Kong is using a talc that's been tested by TEM. There's just no requirement. There's no precedent. So what am I going to do as a good American capitalist?
This problem of asbestos contamination is not limited to Claire's. Other companies such as Avon or high-end companies such as Chanel all have an asbestos contamination problem. Of course, the consumers don't know about the proper testing protocols and regulations. Think about the average consumer. They would never even contemplate, should I have my daughter's sparkly makeup tested for asbestos? They rely on the manufacturers to do the proper testing, to follow the proper regulations, and make sure the product is a safe product when it meets the end consumer. So people want to know, why did I start this campaign against Claire's and the other manufacturers? As of right now, I don't even have a client. I started it because if these types of products can end up in my home, and I know where to send it, I know the laboratories to send it to, the average customer wouldn't. But if my own daughters can be exposed, considering that's my area of expertise, can you imagine the millions of people across this country with asbestos-containing products and they have no idea? This is not about money. This is about saving lives.
To sit here and do one of these samples, if I don't charge a couple $100s per sample, I'm losing money. And we're actually losing money for the laboratory to do that. Why am I doing that? Because I know that this science needs to get into the marketplace to make sure that people don't get sick. You know, I've met people that were dead and dying of mesothelioma that were younger than me. You know, there's actually, there was kids like in their 20s and 30s, right, that have died from these diseases because their parents came home with asbestos on their clothes and they hugged them, right? That shouldn't happen. This is a preventable disease, and we have the science. It's right here. The problem is money. So that's kind of the pain on the bleeding edge of trying to make the world a better place for all of us.
This is one of the products that Mackenzie used, and it came back positive. Yet it's still on the shelves. When we went to the press, I just wanted to share the facts of what we had found with everyone else, and I felt like if we didn't do it, then we were just as guilty as the companies. And the response from that was so overwhelming. We were getting phone calls at the office nonstop, and people wanted to reach out, and they were concerned about their kids. So I decided to create a Facebook page that parents or grandparents or consumers themselves could join, and we could stay connected that way. They're concerned about their kids. Well, my child used the same thing, or I have this product, has this one come back positive? How can I test it? What kind of testing should I do? And it was really a platform to be able to communicate with people all over the country and outside of the United States.
What's needed is a concerted and comprehensive research program and the money to fund it. It's a big problem that has been ignored for far too long, while thousands died from simply breathing. And it won't be fixed with a few easy steps. What I'm urging you to do for your own health and for the health of future generations is to start with step one. Arm yourself with knowledge.
I can't change the fact that Mackenzie was exposed, but I can help prevent other children from being exposed.
Claire's recently filed for bankruptcy protection. What that means is that they're trying to shield themselves from a lawsuit across the country for selling poison to young children. But that's not going to be the end of it. They think they got away with it. However, they're still selling the products. Matter of fact, in the United Kingdom, they've been ordered to remove their products. The Dutch government has ordered them to produce non-asbestos containing products, and they're going to up their screening process. So the action that my firm took has led to change. Unfortunately, it hasn't led to change in the United States yet, and that's the next step. So we're going to go after Claire's in federal court, seeking an injunction that mandates that they get rid of all these products that contain asbestos that they're selling to children.
Well, I've been doing this testing for 30 years now, and it's a very discouraging place. It's tough to keep up the spirit that someday we're going to manifest positive change, but we're seeing some great signs, and I've been very surprised and encouraged by the findings in the girls' makeup, because it's getting an ear. People are starting to really listen. When I go to Washington, D.C., and I talk to senators in the House of Representatives, I've got some attention here. We actually have a bill that just got proposed this year that anytime a cosmetic contains talc, that it should be tested by TEM, transmission electron microscopy. It actually states that in a recently proposed bill. Has that been done before? No. Why is it being done now? Because finally, people are listening. So I'm encouraged.
I leave it to you to take it from here. I must leave it to you because I won't be going on from here. Don't be fooled like I once was. This isn't something that only happens to other people, only to those who work directly with asbestos. This is everybody's problem.
Mackenzie has been so wonderful with turning it into a positive as well. Like, she has seen some of the news clips and she says, I'm changing the world. And if that's what she gets out of this, then it was worth it.
No. Keep your body.